The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is perhaps the most complex political issue of our time. Many have resorted to simply blaming one side or the other. But if we take the time to understand the history and correct our misconceptions, a potential path forward for the Palestinians begins to emerge. So let's start by trying to get the story straight and clear up 10 of the biggest misconceptions out there. Misconception number 1. Israel illegally stole land from the Palestinians. In 1947, the UN voted to give land to both the Jews and the Palestinians. The Jews accepted their partition and legally formed the State of Israel. The Palestinians rejected their partition and attacked. Even after losing the war, the Arabs still had most of the land from the UN ruling. Which leads us to misconception number 2. The surrounding Arab nations actually want to create a Palestinian state. So after the war, the West Bank and Gaza were controlled by Jordan and Egypt for 19 years. During that span, those governments never established a Palestinian state. Instead, they kept the land for their own use. Misconception number 3. The Arab nations want to solve the refugee crisis. Palestinians have settled in Arab nations throughout the Middle East. These nations could solve the crisis immediately by granting refugees equal rights, but instead, they refuse to let them vote, own land, or even study in public schools. Ironically, the only country to grant them full citizenship rights is Israel, which absorbed 156,000 Arabs after the 1948 war, and even today, Arabs hold seats in the Israeli government and Supreme Court. Misconception number 4. UN efforts are helping to solve the refugee crisis. The UN did step in to provide assistance to the Palestinian refugees, but instead of using their existing agency that helps resettle refugee populations around the world, the UN created UNRWA, which labels every Palestinian as a refugee until a Palestinian state is formed within the borders of Israel. This makes it more difficult for Palestinians to thrive in their host countries and locks them into perpetual refugee status, passing it on to their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, swelling the refugee population from 500,000 in 1949 to nearly 5 million today. As conditions worsened, the international aid started to pour in, which, incidentally, is misconception number 5. The solution is more money. Really? Western nations have given the Palestinians a ton of aid. Even taking inflation into account, they've been given 25 times more money per person than Europe was given to rebuild after World War II. Where's the stable economy? Where's the improved infrastructure? That money sure could have helped, but it was given to some leaders who had a different agenda, which brings us headlong into misconception number 6. Forming a state is the primary goal of top Palestinian leaders. All of this international aid did go to help ease one man's suffering, Yasser Arafat. After his death, accountants hired by Arafat's own family discovered secret investments worth more than $1 billion. That income stream would be